I'm like the friggin' worst culprit of all, like what happened last Thursday. Biopic on me is not going to sell millions of copies. We are getting a lot of younger people who are trading coming from the gaming industry. I'd come up with a strategy on how I could predict which way the market was going to go. And I just told you I was going to buy some. Peter, that's not the way it works. Hey everybody, it's me, the Son of Wall Street. Okay, we're going to start dipping into a little bit. So we know that the book is going to be about my life, but we want to transition out of that because it's not a biopic on me is not going to sell millions of copies. What we really need to do is find the transition about how I learned how to trade and the psychology of trading, and then all my different years doing retail and institutional trading as a broker on the floor, and then the customer relationships and all that kind of stuff, and then how the whole new democratization of the trading community and the new retail and investor and trader, and then me and David Green building the academy, and then my new relationship with these young traders, and how my whole psychology of like investing in stocks and not stuff, and learning about how the discipline and consistency of being a good day trader. And so, what is my take different than just anybody else who's out there teaching technical analysis, right? What is it about my relationship to people, to brokers, to my industry, to the business, and then what is that secret sauce that people are going to want to pick up this book and go, that's me. I'm the new young guy in high school or in college who's really into trading. I grew up playing video games, but I know there's something out there that in trading that's going to excite me, because we are getting a lot of the younger people who are trading, are coming from the gaming industry, right? I mean, think about it. Most kids today, anywhere from 10 to 25, 35, 45, grew up playing video games, and they're great with their keyboard, and they know how to really work it. But it's not a money-making apparatus, but trading is. And so if you're able to take that mindset and the ability to be able to really move and groove with a keyboard, and then you put that to stocks and the excitement about charts and markets, because we know that what happened during COVID was, that democratization. I've talked about it a million times. Like everybody, the market became accessible to the public, a public that was never accepted in this world, right? And it's an important message to note, because a lot of people don't talk about what actually happened. The day that COVID happened, when Webull and Robinhood opened up free trading apps. Like before that, we know, I've told this a million times, but the market, you had to be an accredited investor. It was inaccessible to your average Joe and Jane who did not have a whole bunch of money, $25,000 particularly, to open up a day trading account. And also, if you didn't have any background in the market or accessibility to the market, or didn't know about trading or anything, you wouldn't just do that, right? It's not something that's just part of the game. But what happened during COVID was that suddenly, think about it, out of nowhere, everybody was sheltered in place. Everybody had a stimulus check with a couple grand. The Reddit phenomenon happened. Wall Street bets happened. The meme phenomenon happened. Robinhood and Webull happened. The free trading app, the accessibility, the democratization of the trading community. All eyes were suddenly on the stock market, right? For a couple of years, right? Everybody was sheltered in place. There was nothing else to do, and if it hadn't happened the way it happened, it was sort of a wonderful, perfect storm, because, maybe they would have just gone on and played video games. But for some reason, whether it was Reddit and Wall Street bets and the meme phenomenon and Robinhood and all that stuff, suddenly all eyes were on the markets. And then the GameStop thing, it was really an amazing confluence of so many different factors and components that made this all happen. And it happened, and it just was an explosion. It was a revolution. 50 million plus young new traders into the market who were super savvy and were passionate and were intense about it, and they were loving the get rich quick scheme. They were loving all that stuff. They were loving the roaring kitties and it was a phenomenon that was extraordinary, and we can talk about it more. But coming into the business, I started in 1985 as a teletypist. My next job was an option clerk. Then I became a retail clerk, an institutional clerk. And I had no background in trading. My parents had an investment account, but I didn't know that much about the market. Although I did during college, I have to admit, did trade commodities for a little while. out of college when I moved back to New York, and I was getting my master's, which I never finished. And then I was working at Studio 54, and I had my record store. I started trading commodities, orange juice futures, with a guy named Jerry Coffey was his name. And he had a seat. He was a handicapped gentleman in a wheelchair. He worked at the SIBO in Chicago, and I was introduced to him by my friend Stephen Young. And I turned $1,500 or $3,500 that my older brother had given me as a gift. And back in those days, it was before the internet. So like I had come up with a strategy on how to decide whether the markets were going to go up or down. And orange juice was my favorite thing. It was probably because I had seen the Eddie Murphy Trading Places movie, but whatever. I had decided, and then back then you used to, the way you'd find out about before computers. So you had to, I would buy the Wall Street Journal and I would circle, the way they posted the prices of commodities was January, February, March, because you're trading futures. And so I had come up with a strategy on how I could predict which way the market was going to go. And I had no background on it. I just came up with this idea and a bit of an epiphany. And I turned $3,500 into $45,000 over like 6 months. And I was loving it. It was so much fun. It was exciting, the adrenaline. And it was just like something that was hot for me. And then I lost it in one day. The whole thing, the orange juice market went down limit. It happened over 4 days, I have to admit. The gentleman, my broker, got caught in the elevator, and I guess the electricity went out, and he couldn't get out to sell my stock, and I lost everything. I was down to $800. And with $800, all you could trade was potato futures. And so I was trading plywood and potato futures. And I was able to build the account back, but I kind of lost my mojo and whatever. And so that was my first inroad into a little bit of trading. And then I got on the floor, and obviously I had to learn how to trade because I was a clerk. And a clerk is somebody who disseminates information from one clerk to another, right? The way the order flow happens on the floor is I worked at Cowan and Company. They had obviously a big desk upstairs where there were portfolio managers and traders. Right, and then they would call orders down to the floor, and then there would be a head clerk and a clerk like myself, and they would get, buy 1 million shares of this, sell 1 million shares of that with instructions. They would convey that to the clerk, and then the clerk would beep a broker, and I was the clerk. I beeped a broker. We had maybe 10 brokers online, and a broker would come in, and I would have to explain to him what the instructions had been told to me: buy half, work half, be aggressive, be passive, be 25% of the volume, buy 25,000, walk away, whatever it was. So you had to know what to do. And obviously, you learn in the fire of it all, right? I mean, that's the whole point, right? And, it was 3.5 years before I got my own seat, and I actually was trading. But I did start to learn to trade. But it's a different kind of trading. It's institutional trading, it's retail trading, and it's floor trading. It was before there was any kind of there was no electronic trading. There was no, the way we trade now is different. This was open outcry on paper. Now, the whole idea behind it, whether, the nuance of being a good broker, was somebody who could read the room, read the market. I mean, how does a broker in the old days execute stock? You walk into a crowd and you say, hey, everybody, how is it? And everyone would say, I'm a quarter bid for 200,000. I'm a seller at a half. I'm 3/8 bid, but I have some room. I have 200,000 up at the figure, but I may have some room. And you have a crowd, and you kind of start a negotiation, right? That's how you do it. You kind of I guess it would be, I'm not a poker player, but you kind of read the room. You see what everybody has, and people are not going to tell you what they have. Sometimes you work together. Sometimes you're at odds because you're trying to do good for your customer. So that was my foundation of learning how to trade. So different than how it is today, so different than how it was when COVID came along, when the electronic markets happened and all that. And so, my background was completely different. I learned to be a trader. I ended up getting a seat on the stock exchange in 1988, April 17th or something. It was my first seat. I got thrown into the fire. I had my first order. I completely botched it. I walked into a crowd, back in those days, it was kind of like a fraternity down here. They saw me coming. They decided. I walked into the crowd. I was really nervous. I had 5,000 shares of McGraw Hill Partners stock to buy. And the market maker was a bit of a ball buster. His name was Joey Corso. He ended up becoming a patient of my father's. My father took care of his whole family. But it was like one of those things that he was going to break my balls because I was brand new, and he was not going to give me any slack at all. He wasn't going to. That's not how it worked down here on Wall Street. You got thrown in there. You had to shit and take a pickle. That's the way it was. So I walked in and said, "How is it?" And he goes, "It's quarter for 50,000, 20,000 and a half. What do you want to do, Pete?" And I'm going, "I have 5,000 to buy." And he goes, "Well, that's not a bid. You got to tell me, what are you doing?" And I didn't really know the lingo yet. I didn't know any of it. And I said, "You know what? I'll buy 1,000 shares." And he says, "Okay, so it's quarter for 1,000, 1,000 and 3/8. Take them." "Peter, what are you doing?" I said, "I'll buy 1,000 shares." "Well, that's not how you." He said, 1,000 just traded. It's now offered at a half. I said, "Well, I just told you I was going to buy some." "Peter, that's not the way it works." So suddenly it went from a quarter 3/8 to a quarter a half. I had missed the stock. So he goes, "So what do you want to do now, Peter?" And I'm going, "Well, I'm a working buyer." He goes, "Okay." Next thing you know, he says 3/8 for 1,000, 1,000 and a half, take him. And I said, "Well, what am I doing?" He goes, "Well, you didn't say anything, so I just bought 1,000 and a half. So what do you want to do now?" He marked the stock up a whole $1 and didn't let me buy a share of stock. I was standing there like, what do I do now? What do I do now? And he goes, "Pete, the stock's up $1. You haven't bought a share of stock. Like, I'm not holding your hand here." And I said, "Oh, okay, I'm 3/4 for 5,000. He said sold. By the time I got back to my booth, he had marked the stock all the way back down to where it was when I walked in. Right? I looked like an idiot. The customer was going, "Who is this buffoon that you gave this order to?" He walked in, he missed it at a quarter, a half, 5/8, 3/4, and he buys it at 3/4, all of it, and then it goes right back to zero. I mean, he couldn't have been a worse execution. That was my. It never happened again. That was the lesson I learned. But anyway, that's the way trading happened in the old days. Now, what happens now? What happens with the new retail trader? What happens with technical analysis? See, there's a difference between trading stock that customers give to an institution or a brokerage firm and going out into an open outcry crowd and trading, and today day trading the stock market using technical analysis, using charts, using moving averages, using support and resistance. It's a totally different world. And so when COVID came along, David Green and I decided we would open up Wall Street Global Trading Academy. We saw an opportunity. 50 million new people came in to trade the market. Not one of the platforms that was offering accessibility to the market had an educational component to it. So we saw, wow, there's an opportunity. That's what life's all about, right? You have a problem, you look for the opportunity, you find the solution, and you make it happen. Right, and so that's been I've learned that's a great premise for life in general. When you're looking for an opportunity or you're confronted by a problem, right? As opposed to there's sitting around and wondering what to do, or sitting around and considering, and just sort of sputtering is not that doesn't put writing on anybody's wall. You've got to get in it. You've got to test your waters. You've got to grow, and I love that way of doing it. I don't like my hand being held. I like to just go in it. You make a mistake. We learn so much more from failure than we do from success. I mean, anybody, you ask you ask Jack Ma, the CEO of Alibaba, who on the day of the IPO made $287 billion. He asked 100 people to lend him $5,000 when he had the idea of Alibaba, and he got turned down 99 times. And it was the last guy. Imagine, it's not how many times you get turned down. It's a matter of how many times. I was watching Charlie Rocket did a motivational speech the other day, and he talked about, think about it, he said, Roger Federer, the greatest tennis player in the world, only his batting average, his hitting average, his point average is only 54%, meaning the greatest tennis player in the world only wins 54% of his points. Michael Jordan missed 82% of his shots and only hit 18%. Wayne Gretzky missed 68% of his shots, but he was the greatest player in the world. So the whole idea behind this is it's not a matter of how many times you win or how many times you lose. It's how can you stay positive while losing, knowing that if you keep going, that you will win. Right? It's the psychology thing, because when people lose, they think they're not good enough, they're not smart enough, they're incompetent, they have no self-esteem, they have no confidence. The secret sauce is how do you navigate failure to deal with success. It doesn't mean that everybody who's great at something does it 100% of the time. As I just described to you, you may do it actually less times, but it's a matter of how do you deal with the mental stress, right, of losing on your way to winning. And I love that. Charlie Rocket's a master. Everybody got to check him out because he's an amazing motivational speaker. He's a young guy. He was a big deal hip-hop entrepreneur as a young man. Then he got a brain tumor and almost died. And he had a vision that he wanted to become a Nike athlete. And he was actually and he weighed hundreds of 500 pounds. He lost weight. He went to the Nike office. He actually said to them, I'm going to be in a Michael Jordan commercial with Nike. And they go, you're out of your mind. He lost all the weight. He got rid of his brain tumor. He ran a marathon. He ended up getting the commercial with Nike and Michael Jordan. It's that kind of determination. That he is somebody I aspire. And he turned his whole life around and committed his life to helping dreams come true for all other people who are not able to get their dreams Anyway, I'm telling you a roundabout way of how day trading in the stock market is a completely different thing. And so, lots of people teach you how to trade the stock market. David Green, my partner, teaches you how, the foundational stuff and the fundamental stuff about moving averages and pivot points and support and resistance and stop orders and all that. But for me, one of the most important things is the psychology of trading, and how, because I've dealt with a lot of young people who think about it. Some people think it's a get rich quick scheme. Some people can't handle that. They let a losing day define them. I have a young kid named Cooper who I've been working with for a year now, and he's good, he's passionate, he loves it. But he lets his emotions run rampant, and when he has a losing day, he lets it define him, that he's a loser. If you have a bad day trading, it doesn't define you as anything except you're having a bad day. You'll come back from a bad day, right? And so those are the psychological tools that are, that's one of my secret sauces, that I can sit down with somebody, and somebody who wants to give up. Think about all the stuff that I've had happen to me where I could have given up a million friggin' times, right? Losing my parents, which we all lose, right? My wife and my brother, getting COVID, almost dying. I just had another friggin' madness happen a few days ago. At the end of the day, it's not a matter of how many times you get knocked down and how many times you get back up and do that. But it is a full-time job to understand how we navigate through the darkness into the light, and how we navigate discipline and consistency in trading, and how we're able to, put together one day at a time, one good trade, right? And it's all about the psychology of it. And I think that's the message I really want people to get out of this, is which is when I talk to young people who are learning how to day trade this market. Okay. First of all, confidence. There's a formula to it. There are rules. You cannot be all over the place. You cannot, David always says too, executing a winning trade and a losing trade correctly is the same thing, right? And that's it's hard to sort of understand, but it's so true. If you're following the rules, right? The winning or losing is just making money is just sort of as an end result of having a good day or a good successful trade. But at the end of the day, it's just following a formula, right? And you've got to control your high highs and your low lows. You got to control your emotional thing. You go back to the original Wall Street movie, never get emotional about money. You cannot do that. You cannot. And I find it. Look, this is one of the hardest things in the world. When I trade the market now with Benny downstairs, we're trading the SPY. It's so hard not to get emotional about the trade because you never want to lose, right? You're trading other people's money, right? And so losing is difficult. But as I harp back to the Charlie story, losing, a big L is nothing more than a path to the big W's, right? And so, and if you do it consistency and disciplined, right? And how to hit singles and doubles, right? I think some of the greatest hitters of all time, right? What did Babe Ruth got struck out more than any other baseball player ever in history. That's such a great story that he told about all the greatest athletes in the world, right, are not they're not flawless. They don't win 100% of the time by any means, right? And so that's not what it's all about. It's a matter of how you navigate and build your psychological framework up so that you can deal with, like, life is not easy, man, right? There's so many times, and I talk to I do motivational speaking to a lot of young people who, things happen, we have our struggles, everybody goes through stuff emotionally, financially, in so many different ways, and that make you want to just give up, make you want to cower under the covers and not come out, and isolate, right? And only negatives. What's that great line? Only negatives are developed in the dark. Right, that's a great old line, right? That staying positive is super important. Just working towards going forward. So, all that being said, in this new world of electronic trading, day trading, right? We built our academy, right? And then we've got Apex, right? We've got Vanquish now. So there's ways of doing this, and there's a formula set up that you can do it. But it still doesn't guarantee you success, right? The bottom line is what you'll end up. Why do these companies exist? It's because 91% of people who try to day trade the market fail. Right? That's the kind of crazy part of this whole thing. So one of the things I want to tell, one of the messages is that the psychology of all of this, whether it's life, whether it's relationships, whether it's a job, whether it's day trading, right? It's a full-time job to deal with your own self-esteem, with your own confidence, with your own resilience, with your own just prodding going forward, right? Because shit happens, right? Shit happens physically, emotionally, mentally. I mean, life is by no means a cakewalk, right? We all have our shit, right? And so, my best message is that, first of all, surround yourself with a team, right? You need people on your team who, who care about you, right? Who want the best for you, right? Look, when everything's great and you're all flush and you got tons of money, everybody's your best friend. But when when you're sick and you're struggling and you're down on your luck, that's when the rubber meets the road. That's when you get to define who your friends are, really, and that's important. And so those are the people you want to surround yourself with, right? And so these are all the different little things that I think are important because, we don't live in these isolated little satellite worlds. I mean, our love life, our friendships, our family, our job, our trading, our hobbies. These are things that all need teamwork. They all, you all need people you can ask for help. That's one of the other things that we don't do is, like, even me, I'm like the friggin' worst culprit of all. Like what happened last Thursday. Like I'm standing up here on the friggin' balcony, friggin' dying, and I'm afraid to ask for help because I'm a perfectionist, right? I had to bully my way through it, even at the risk of almost dropping off the friggin' face of the earth. And so, asking for help is not easy. Knowing when to say enough is enough. Knowing when you realize what's really important. That I could just keep going, and money. I keep saying it that money can be a motivator, but it's not my end all be all. But something's making me overwork and burning me out. Clearly, the universe is sending me a message that it's time to calm the fuck down and chill a little bit and take time off and do that kind of stuff. But all that being said, what I love to do when I talk to young traders is you need a big support system to do anything. Relationships, family, work, job, day trading, you need a support system. And those are people who are behind you all the way. And they're people that you need to ask for help from. There are people who, read you, because when we are in trouble, we're the last ones to ask for help. So we need people who kick the chair, right? Until you do something, right? It's like, that's super important. You don't want people who are going to kowtow to you and be afraid to, say anything. Like you guys on Thursday were Pete, you got to stop, right? And I still didn't listen to anybody, to the point where, you know, I was ripping the syringe out of my arm at the hospital. I'm sure they're really happy with me. Anyway, so at the end of the day, I think that's the message for today's video, is that the psychology of trading, the resilience, the teamwork, discipline, consistency are so important in this day trading thing, and you know, in anything, because for some reason, you know, money is fascinating. It's necessary. We need it and all, and day trading is a great way to get it. I love the fact that I can be the face of this new phenomenon and this new revolution, that this accessibility, whether I do with it Vanquish or I do with it with Apex, the fact that I can be the face that brings this out to all these people. Because if you think about it, a lot of these kids who are trading and making amazing money now, if all the planets didn't align the way they've done with the Apexes and the Vanquishes and me and everything that I'm doing and making this market accessible, right? I mean, you know, my demographic is from 8 to 80, right? I amazingly enough, I mean, and without that much ego on it, I've inspired and motivated probably millions of people to go out there and learn about the stock market, learn a little bit of financial literacy, learn how to day trade the market. I mean, for me, that, you know, I was taught intensely as a child that it's not a matter about the cash and prizes. At the end of the day, we're all fucking naked and dead when nobody gets out of here alive, all right? But if you're able to affect somebody else, one person, in a positive way when this whole journey and game is over, then you've done your job. And that's God has done a good service. I learned that from my parents. You know, I've learned that from my mentors like David Meltzer. You know, at the end of the day, kindness, gratitude, bringing joy to another human being, changing somebody's life and it can be done so simply. A random act of kindness will keep you in the light. That goes back to the Kabbalah, right, which is old Jewish mystic shit, right? That random act of kindness will keep you in the light. Doing something against your nature will keep you in the light, right? So, walking up to somebody, think about it, how much, and I talk about this all the time, that I've learned way more from the most unlikely sources, right? You know, when somebody's talking shit and it upsets me, right, sometimes I have to stop and go, you know what, it's pissing me off because it's probably something I need to hear, right? Because I'm great at giving advice, but I'm terrible at listening to my own advice or taking advice from other people because I'm a stubborn two-bit piece of shit. Anyway, all right, that's all I got to say about that.